Hi, hello and welcome to another Life Rooms chat. And this chat is about being a carer. And today, I'm Mark and I'm one of the learning facilitators here at the Life Rooms. And today I've got with me Dan Ward.
Yeah.
And Dan's going to be sharing his own personal experience of being a carer. I've also got John Hill from Sefton Carer Centre with us today. And finally, but not least, we've got Kath Mills, who's the Merseycare Service User Carer Lead. So thanks for joining us today, everyone. And I think the idea why we wanted to create this video is we wanted to do a video for carers. There's a lot of carers out there, I feel, you know, sometimes they can feel like they're on their own, they can feel isolated. So what we wanted to do is to have a little discussion, offer a bit of advice to some of our viewers, and just sort of pass the message on that you're not alone, you know, get people to be looking after themselves as well as the person they're caring for. Because sometimes as a carer you can forget to care for yourself, you can start neglecting yourself. So I thought it'd be good if we could share some organisations that we've worked with. So everyone on the panel today have got personal experience of either being a carer or working with carers. So I thought a good way to start off would go around the group and we'd just introduce our experience of being a carer. So I'll start off myself. I've got experience of, I used to work in the looked after children sector, looking after kids in care, and I was a carer in that sector, and then I moved on to working in a unit for patients suffering with dementia. So I worked really closely with families, carers, and I saw firsthand sort of how it can impact people being a carer for someone with a condition like dementia. And also recently I've had a member of my family who's needed caring for, so I've been involved in their care and again seeing the impact it's had on other relatives within the family. So that's my personal experience with being a carer or being involved in care. I'm going to go to you first, if that's okay, Kath. So you mentioned that you're the service user and carer lead for Merseycare. Yeah. So what does that involve, Kath?
Well, my role is to involve carers and service users in how we run the organisation and manage it. For example, getting involved in the governance of Merseycare, staff training, research projects. We involve our carers in lots of activities like that. I'm also the lead for Triangle of Care, which is the therapeutic relationship between the service user, the carer and the service. And the Merseycare has signed up to a commitment to achieving the standards of Triangle of Care.
Oh, that's very good. And you've had some personal experience as a carer as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I cared for my mum for some years who had Parkinson's disease, and after she passed away I cared for my dad who had dementia.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Kath, and hopefully some of the themes we discuss you'll be able to talk about that as the session goes on. Yeah. Thanks, Kath. So John, you work for Sefton Carer Centre. What's your experience as working as a carer?
Well, I've worked for the Sefton Carer Centre for 8 years now, I think. My role within the centre has differed over the years, depending on circumstances and needs of the organisation. I'm a member of the senior management team, and there are about 40 staff, most of whom work part-time in the centre, many of whom have experience of working with carers, unpaid family carers. My own experience of caring goes back 30 years. In the 1980s, my father was ill, diagnosed with lung cancer, and a few years later, still in the same decade, my mum was terminally ill. I had no brothers and sisters, I had no family as such, so the burden upon me at the time, which is very fresh in the memory, was quite considerable. And I was lucky enough to have some friends who assisted me. But at those days, there weren't any carer centres as such, and a lot of the services that existed didn't really focus on the needs of carers, which is something that carer centres and other organisations these days are trying to address as an issue.
Definitely, and I think something that you mentioned there was really important and something that we can explore. You mentioned about friends helping out as well. Yeah. Sometimes as carers we feel we've got to take everything on, but there's no harm in saying to a friend or someone else within the family, go and like need a little bit of assistance. So it's about not bottling things up and, you know, using people around us as well, isn't it? So I'm glad that you mentioned that, John, and again, maybe something we can explore.
It's really important that people reach out for help.
Exactly, yeah. Brilliant. Thanks for that, John. And finally, but not least, Dan, do you want to share some of your experience?
Yeah, so my experience as a carer goes back to childhood, really. So I had a sister who was 12 months younger than me, who was born with cystic fibrosis. So from birth, she had a terminal illness. So growing up, and I wouldn't say I actually considered myself in the role as a carer. It was just the norm for us to care for her. So she had lots of things that we needed to help her with regards to like physio, medication, and generally just looking after her as well. I mean, obviously I went right through school with her, so being a year older, a lot of people didn't really know about cystic fibrosis back then because it was in the 80s. It was a relatively new thing. So a lot of the time, teachers in school and stuff like that, if they wanted to know anything about it, they'd come and speak to me, or if there was a problem with my sister, the first person they'd come and get is me. And that went right up until the age of, well, I was 21 when she died, she was 20. So all through childhood, really, I suppose I was classed as a carer, or I was in a caring position. So that's kind of like where my experience stems from. And then later in life, obviously I've had sick relatives that I've cared for as well.
I think what Dan made a really important point there. Sometimes people are caring for someone, but they don't class themselves as a carer. I think so. I think that leads us on to what we're going to talk about next. Actually, is what actually is a carer? How do we define what a carer is? How would you say we define a carer?
In the context we're talking about, I would define a carer as someone who helps look after, support another person in an unpaid capacity. It could be of any age, relative, friend, but the important thing is that they're actively engaged in the person's life.
I think a key word there as well in care is the word care. And I think it's anybody who kind of puts someone else's needs ahead of their own for whatever reason, whether it be a family member, whether it be, you know, part of your lifestyle. But if somebody needs help and you're the one that's doing that help, then you're a carer, do you know what I mean? You care for them. And that was, going back to what I said earlier, that was the strange thing for me, because it was never felt like it was a role, it just felt like it was what people do. So going later on into life after my sister died, it also felt like there was a bit of a void in life then, because I had all this time to kind of live my life, and I didn't know what that was meant to look like, because there's always had that routine of having someone to care for.
I think that's a really interesting point, because well, I said at the beginning of the video about sometimes we neglect our own needs as carers, but what you just described then is actually really interesting, that when you wasn't caring then, you felt like there was a void there. So what are people's thoughts on that?
Just going back to the definition, the only point I would add, so I agree with everything that Kath has said really, is that we're thinking about who is an actual carer. Yes, unpaid, usually caring for a family member, or a friend, or a neighbour. The key thing I'd add on to it is caring for someone who couldn't manage without that support. So that's how essential carers are, unpaid family carers, absolutely essential to providing care and underpinning statutory services. You know, without carers being in the role, playing the role they do, I don't
carers save the economy something like £32 billion a year, something in that.
It's the equivalent expenditure they save the country the same as the country spends on the NHS.
Yeah,
and it's unpaid by and large.
But some of the research I've done, I've got a figure of 6.8 million carers across the country. So, you know, it's a vast amount, isn't it? So,
what's interesting about that figure, though, is how many, that 6.8 might be people that class themselves as carers, but there's probably a couple of other million that don't even realise that that's what they're doing, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because I think you said earlier on, Dan, you know, when we're in that position where it might be a relative, it just becomes well, I've got to do that, it's my relative, it's my mum, my father, whoever it is, so it's not a role as such, you just automatically do it. I think out of that 6.8 million carers, half of them have to give up employment.
Yeah.
So these are other stresses that we can look at, you know, for carers. You know, it's a struggle, isn't it? And I think that could lead us on to the advantages and disadvantages of being a carer. So that's what I'd like us to discuss now, what the advantages and disadvantages are. So I've already mentioned disadvantages. We may have to give up our jobs or things that we enjoy doing. Can you think of any other disadvantages?
Well, giving up a job means you're giving up an income, or reducing an income if you're going part-time. And that can be absolutely crucial. It can be a real serious problem because people, by and large, don't have huge amounts of savings to fall back upon. And although carers allowance is available, and lots of free services, such as the services the Sefton Carer Centre provide, are free and available, nevertheless, the lifestyle change demanded by someone giving up a job for caring responsibilities can be enormous. And the emotional strain that can place, because obviously there's a tremendously strong link between people's ability simply to pay their bills and pay their way and their own mental health and well-being. And that's what we find absolutely crucial. We can talk later, but one of the services that is provided at the Sefton Carer Centre is very popular, very successful, is our welfare benefit service. And that service itself has generated Sefton alone over £1 million in the last 12 months for carers. And carers constantly remind us and tell us how important it is that they can pay their bills so they can concentrate on just being carers of the people that they care for and not have to worry about the knock on the door, the letter with the red writing and all that stuff.
I think what goes hand in hand with that as well is also that carer's quality of life, because they don't have an income, so they are relying on the money that is coming in, such as like a care allowance and things like that. That money is already sort of marked for paying bills or paying rent or whatever. But then where's the money for like things like going on holidays and you know, spending money on yourself? Because if you're earning 30 grand a year and you've got used to having a lifestyle and then all of a sudden you've give that up and then all that money is focused on food and bills, then obviously that's going to have a massive effect on your own mental health, because you've kind of changed everything about your life to look after somebody. But the disadvantage is that you've given up all sort of like the perks of what you can do when you're in a full-time job and what that money can provide as well.
And should your care responsibilities eventually come to an end, as they can often do, it's difficult then to get back into the workplace. Your career's been disrupted, you've lost your seniority, and you have to start again, as it were. So it's not easy. It's totally life-changing.
That's a good point to make. It's sort of starting at the bottom of the ladder again in some ways, isn't it? Having to climb back up,
I mean, I was quite lucky because the other people that I've cared for, my nan when she was ill and my auntie when she was ill, and I'm quite lucky because my family's really big, so we managed to work it so that people weren't having to take time off work or having to miss out on things like that. But not all families have that luxury. Some people only have that one person that they can rely on who does have to kind of give up everything. And it's not just the financial side of it and the work side of it, it's the personal life side of it as well. You know, that you do, when you're a carer, you do stop yourself doing things because you've got this responsibility for this person. So things like going on holiday, if you want to go on holiday for a week, it's not as simple as booking a holiday and going on holiday. It's the planning that you have to put into place to make sure that that person's looked after. And if it is another family member, it's then seeing whether they can arrange to have the time off work to take your place while you're not there, and things like that as well. And I don't know whether you've come across this a lot, and I'm sure you probably have, but it's also the guilt as well that comes with it. So I remember with my sister, my routine was I'd finish work and then I'd go to the hospital to see my sister. Now, at this point, I was like an 18, 19-year-old lad, so I had friends who were out going to the pub every night after work, and my routine was that. And I remember some nights thinking, I don't want to go and see my sister, I want to go and do this. But then after my sister died, I did carry a lot of guilt about those times that I didn't want to do that, you know what I mean? And that's the effect it can have on carers as well.
Yeah, well, that reminds me of a story of a friend of mine who used to care for his mum, and he was around 16 to I think early 20s, and as you mentioned, that's the time when growing up you might start going to the pub and things like that. And this lad, after he stopped caring for his mum in the early 20s, he struggled dating, you know, starting to date, because at the age when we were all going out and sort of dating, he struggled with that, and I remember having conversations with him where he'd say, I just find it really hard to talk to women and stuff like that. So little things like, well, we think the little things, but it can have a big impact on you, can't?
I mean, I can remember after my sister died, just thinking to myself that all of a sudden I've got all this free time and I don't know what to do with it, because I always had that routine of go to work, go and see my sister, go to work, go and see my sister, and the weekends was kind of like the time I had for myself. Well, all of a sudden I just had this time where there was nothing to do, and it was strange because for someone else that night might just be, oh, I'm playing footy this night, or I'm going to do this night, whereas I was like, well, what do I do with my time now?
Well, that's why it's important. The Sefton Carer Centre and many other carer centres will continue to offer support to carers for 2 years or more after the caring role has ceased, because there have been carers and they're carrying all sorts of emotional baggage that needs to be dealt with. And as I say, we don't abandon carers, because we should all be grateful for the role they play. Society gets so much benefit out of those carers.
And that, I mean, that's the thing at the moment, especially given COVID-19 at the moment, and you know, there's a lot of focus on key workers and NHS workers, and you know, everyone, all of the media is around them, but then you don't really hear about the people that aren't getting paid to do that and are still putting themselves at risk. Do you know what I mean? The carers, you know, the people that are shielding at the moment, so they're not allowed to leave the house. They rely on carers to bring them food, to ensure that the bills are getting paid, medications and things like that, and they're all the sort of stuff that's going on at the moment that's not being recognised. But even that's very stressful on someone who's a carer, because their life is in your hands and their responsibility. Do you know what I mean? And that's something I think is a shame that doesn't go recognised at the moment as well.
And I think that, you know, and this video may go out after we're through the recovery period of COVID-19, but you know, it's just an added stress, isn't it? So whereas you're caring for someone, you may be going to collect the prescription or collect the shopping during COVID-19, whereas that might take an hour, might be taking 2 or 3 hours, so it has a massive impact, a bit like a domino effect then, on how you have to care to that person.
And the carers are also putting themselves at risk of the pandemic, because unfortunately they don't have an underlying health condition, which means they can fulfil that role, but by fulfilling that role they're putting themselves at risk, because they're putting themselves in environments where there are other people that could transmit. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, they are putting themselves out there for other people and going above and beyond, and not getting the sort of recognition they deserve for it at the moment, unfortunately.
Any other disadvantages that you can think of?
I think one thing I can think of, I have a friend at the moment who's caring for her husband, and if she goes out, the husband has become very resistant to anyone else looking after him other than his wife. So if she needs to go out to the shops, or if she has an appointment or something and she asks her son to come down, the cared for, the husband, he doesn't like that. He only wants to be cared for by Anne, his wife.
Yeah, and I think that's quite a common thing as well. It's that idea of, you know, you take ownership of being a carer and you don't want to hand the reins over to anyone else, but you do need that respite, don't you? You do need that time away.
But if the cared for is resistant to that,
it
creates a big problem.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah. Any other disadvantages that we can think of?
Well, lots, basically. It's well, we talked about carers becoming carers, and you know, carers are caring usually for the people they love and care for, and what to carry on caring. We're going back to that. You know, we need to turn a disadvantage into an advantage, really, so we end up in a position where they're aware of the service and support that's available to allow them to carry on doing the thing that in most cases, in most times, they want to do, which is to care for their loved one. But no one should be doing that on their own. They should be reaching out, or services should be reaching out to them as much as possible.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this video as well. Please feel free to contact us. You can contact the Life Rooms on 0151 478 6556, and you can also go onto our website, which is www.liferooms.org. And if you've enjoyed the video, please check out some of our other videos on our YouTube channel. And if you want to fill in an evaluation form and tell us what type of Life Rooms chats you'd like us to do next, get in touch touch with us. This is your service, this online offer is for you. So let us know what you'd like us to focus on. Thanks everyone for watching. Hopefully you'll see you soon. Take care everyone.
Bye.
Bye.